So I think it's very unfortunate how we make an incorrect assumption that women are discriminated against in a certain area, for example. And on the basis of that assumption, which is wrong, we then proceed to try and fix the problem, which doesn't exist. And in so doing, we end up discriminating against men and giving unjustified assistance to women. And when it's not necessary, it's undeserved and it's unfair against men. So we make the assumption, for example, that women are discriminated against in some area, maybe engineering or whatever. We assume that women are discriminated against in engineering because there are so few female engineers. So there must be discrimination against women. And that's an incorrect assumption, but we believe it anyway. And then we start to look for evidence of discrimination against women to explain why there are so few female engineers. The reality is that there are so few female engineers because women are not interested in engineering to the same degree as men. Men are more interested in engineering than women, and that's simply the way it is. And that's why there are more men who enter engineering. It's not a question of unfairness against women. It's a question of women's choices and women's interests. But we assume that women are discriminated against, and then we look for proof to justify this assumption. And we can't find any because there isn't any to be found. And so we end up manufacturing evidence to support this false assumption. And that leads to discrimination against men and unfair assistance to women to fix a problem which doesn't exist. And I think this is so unfortunate, and yet it's so systemic. It's a constant behavior in people where we make false assumptions and then try and support the false assumption. And so we look for any evidence which supports the false assumption and ignore any evidence which goes against that assumption, which would help correct our understanding. And it is incredibly frustrating that this happens, and it happens a great deal in the area of women's rights and human rights in general. It is absolutely awful and leads to high discrimination against men and unfair advantage given to women.